Something just happened in the used car market that I do not think enough people are paying attention to. And I want to walk you through it today because if this plays out the way the data suggests it might, it is going to affect every single person who needs to buy a car in the next 6 months. The Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index just posted a 4.2% monthly price jump in March. That is wholesale prices, the prices dealers pay at auction when they are restocking their lots. 4.2% in 1 month. Not annualized, 1 month. And on a year-over-year basis, used vehicle wholesale prices are now up 5.7%. The biggest annual increase since the pandemic price explosion. Now I know some of you heard those numbers and thought, okay, car prices going up, nothing new. But here is what I need you to understand. The reason this specific report matters is not just that prices went up. It is that this is the exact same pattern, same auction data, same conversion rates, same supply and demand dynamics that appeared in 2020 right before used car prices went absolutely haywire. And right before that, inflation bled into every other category in the economy and made everything more expensive for everyone. So let me walk you through all of it, the numbers, what is driving them, the 2020 comparison, and what you should actually do about it. First, let me explain what Manheim is. Manheim is a division of Cox Automotive, and it is the largest used vehicle auction network in the country. When dealers need to buy inventory to put on their lots, a massive portion of them go through Manheim. Rental fleets sell their retired vehicles there. Finance companies move their off-lease inventory there. Repos, corporate fleets, government fleets, all of it. The Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index tracks what dealers are actually paying at those auctions every single month. Why does that matter? Because whatever a dealer pays at auction in March shows up in the price on the lot in May or June. Wholesale leads retail by a couple of months. So when the wholesale number jumps, you know what is coming before it gets there. In March 2026, the average used vehicle sold at wholesale for $20,102. That is a 4.2% increase from February. Year over year, it is up 5.7%. And seasonally adjusted, the monthly figure came in at 1.4%. That adjusted number matters because it tells you the jump is real, not seasonal noise. Now here is the part that really jumped out at me when I read through this report. It is not just the price number, it is the conversion rate. Sales conversion at Manheim auctions hit 68.2% in March. The 3-year average for March sits around 63.6%. Dealers were not just showing up, they were buying aggressively. More than 2 out of every 3 vehicles that hit the auction block sold. And that conversion rate was 5.5 percentage points above where it was in February, meaning the buying intensity accelerated into March. It did not slow down. Think about what that tells you. Supply is already tight, and dealers are competing harder for it than they have in years. That combination does not lead to prices stabilizing. So why is this happening right now? There are several things colliding at once, and I want to walk through each one because I think people are underestimating how much these forces are reinforcing each other. The first one is tax refunds. The total amount refunded through March 27 was up 13.6% year over year, according to the IRS. The average refund check rose to $3,521, up 11.1% from last year. For a lot of Americans, a $3,500 tax refund is the biggest single lump sum they see all year, and $3,500 makes a solid down payment on a used vehicle. It brings the monthly payment down enough that people who were on the fence about buying suddenly decide to pull the trigger. Cox Automotive said directly that these refunds fueled demand at the auctions in March. More retail buyers mean dealers need more inventory. More dealer demand at auction means higher wholesale prices. The second thing is tariffs. New vehicle prices have gone up because of tariff costs hitting the manufacturing side. Some automakers are absorbing the costs, some are passing them along. Most are doing a combination. Either way, the sticker shock on new vehicles is pushing buyers who would have otherwise bought new directly into the used market. That increases used car demand at the exact same time supply is already constrained. The third thing driving this is gas prices. Rising fuel costs are actually sending demand specifically toward used EVs. When you are looking at what it costs to fill a tank every week and then you see a used EV sitting at $28,000, that math starts to make more sense. Cox Automotive noted this directly. EV wholesale prices jumped 8% year over year to 28,471. That is the strongest annual gain of any vehicle category right now. And ICE vehicles are also up, 4.2% year over year to 19,074. Both segments rising simultaneously tells you this is a broad market shift, not a single category story. Okay, this is the part I really want you to pay attention to because this is the context that makes this report matter beyond just a monthly data update. From mid-2020 through mid-2022, the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index spiked by more than 60%. Let that sit for a second. More than 60% in 2 years. The fastest and largest used vehicle price explosion ever recorded. And retail CPI inflation for used vehicles followed that wholesale spike with a lag of a few months. The retail number came in at a 55% increase. So a used car that cost $20,000 before the spike was selling for $31,000 at the peak. People were paying $31,000 for vehicles they would have bought for $20,000 2 years earlier. And a lot of them did not have a choice because they needed a car to get to work. Here is the part people tend to forget about that period. The used car inflation did not stay contained in the used car market. It bled into transportation cost indexes. It pushed up insurance rates because when replacement costs climb, payouts climb, and then premiums follow. It contributed to the broader sense that everything was getting more expensive all at once. Because in a lot of ways, the used car market was the early warning system for that entire inflation episode. Then from mid-2022 through mid-2024, prices corrected. They came back down and gave up a portion of those gains. And during that period, you heard economists and Fed officials constantly citing falling used car prices as evidence that inflation was cooling, and they were right. Falling used car prices were doing heavy lifting to bring core CPI down, but that process hit a floor in 2024. Prices stopped falling, started ticking up. And now, in March 2026, they are accelerating. Wolf Richter at Wolf Street put it directly. He wrote, "These new inflation pressures suddenly building up in the pipeline are concerning." I agree with that assessment. The same leading indicator that warned us about the 2020 inflation wave is firing again. And I think people need to understand what that means for where prices go from here across the broader economy, not just for cars. This is not happening in a vacuum. That is the part that really concerns me about this timing. The Cleveland Fed recently put out a model projection showing CPI inflation at 5.5% for Q2 of this year. Inflation has been above the Fed's 2% target for 5 straight years now. That is not a short-term overshoot. That is a structural problem that has not been solved. And here comes the used vehicle market, which was one of the main things helping cool that inflation over the past couple of years, now reversing direction. At the same time, gas prices have spiked since the beginning of the regional conflict in the Middle East. Energy costs are bleeding into everything else. Transportation, logistics, food. Restaurant sales have been falling because people cannot afford to eat out when a bigger chunk of their budget is going to fuel. Gig workers are being more selective about which deliveries they take because gas is eating into their margins. And the household balance sheet for a lot of Americans is already stressed. Savings rates have dropped. Credit card delinquencies are rising. Auto loan delinquencies are rising. Mortgage delinquencies are rising. And now the price of getting to work is going back up. The compounding effect is what I keep coming back to when I look at all of this together. Not any single data point. The direction in which multiple data points are pointing at the same time. And right now, a lot of them are pointing the same direction. If the 2020 pattern holds, the retail CPI impact from what is happening at wholesale right now hits in 2 to 3 months. That puts us at June or July. That is not far away at all, guys. Now, let me spend a few minutes on the EV side of this specifically, because I think it is underreported and the numbers are genuinely surprising. For the past year, the story on used EVs was mostly negative. Prices were falling. Demand was soft. People were skeptical. And honestly, that made used EVs a pretty attractive value proposition for buyers who were willing to look past the noise. The Q1 2026 data is starting to change that story. Manheim sold nearly 37,000 used EVs at wholesale in Q1, a record. More than 100,000 used EVs sold at retail in Q1, the second best quarter on record. And wholesale EV prices are up 8% year over year, despite more supply coming into the market. Prices rising even as supply increases means demand is growing faster than supply. That dynamic does not usually lead to prices stabilizing. Let me give you some practical direction here because I think most people want to know what to actually do with this information, not just what the data says. If you need to buy a vehicle in the next 6 months and you have been waiting because you thought prices were going to keep falling, that waiting strategy is no longer supported by the data. Wholesale prices are heading up. Retail follows in a couple of months. If you buy in August or September, you are probably stepping into a more expensive market than today. That does not mean rush out and panic, buy something you cannot afford. It means the patient waiting approach is no longer obviously correct. If your vehicle is paid off and it runs, keep driving it. I genuinely believe a lot of people underestimate how much financial breathing room a paid-off vehicle gives you. The average vehicle on American roads today is 12 to 8 years old. That number tells you that a lot of people have figured this out already. A $600 repair is still a fraction of 1 month of a new car payment. If you are thinking about trading in, trade-in values are up because wholesale prices are up. That works in your favor, but be careful about rolling a higher trade-in value into an even higher priced vehicle without doing the full math. A bigger down payment on a more expensive car does not automatically improve your position. If you are financing, know the total amount financed. Know the total interest cost over the full loan term. A 72-month or 84-month loan at current rates adds up to a total payout figure that most people do not calculate when they are sitting in the finance office. Ask for that total payout number, not just the monthly payment. Those are two very different numbers, and only one of them tells you what the car is actually going to cost you. And if you were specifically looking at a used EV as a value play, understand that the pricing advantage from 6 months ago is compressing. That window is narrower than it was, still potentially worth considering depending on your situation, but no longer the obvious deal it was a year ago. Here is where I land on all of this. The Manheim data is one of the clearest leading indicators we have in the consumer economy. It tells you what is coming at the retail level before it arrives. Right now, it is telling us that used car prices are accelerating, 4.2% in 1 month, 5.7% year over year, biggest annual gain since the pandemic price spike. Conversion rates the highest in years, supply tight, demand elevated from multiple directions at once. The last time this pattern showed up, it kicked off a price spiral that pushed used vehicles up 55% at retail over 2 years and contributed to broad inflation across the entire economy. I am not telling you that is definitely what happens this time. There are factors that could moderate it. Supply from off-lease EVs is increasing. Higher gas prices could eventually suppress demand. A lot depends on how long the current energy situation lasts and how the broader economy absorbs these pressures. But the directional signal is not ambiguous. The trend has reversed. The leading indicator is flashing, and anyone making a vehicle decision in the next few months is making it in a market that is moving against them, not in their favor. The practical takeaway is simple. If you need a car, today is probably a better day to buy than 3 months from now, based on where wholesale prices are going. If you do not need a car, do not buy one. If you have a paid-off vehicle, appreciate it. And if you are financing anything, know the total cost before you sign. Subscribe and make sure notifications are on because we are going to keep tracking this. The next Manheim update is about 30 days out. Given what we saw in March, that April number is going to tell us a lot about whether this is the beginning of a sustained move or something that moderates quickly. I will cover it as soon as it drops. Share this with someone who is thinking about buying a car in the next few months. It might be the most useful thing they watch before they make that decision.